The November rain in Portland falls with a persistence that matches the grey of the sky, a cold drizzle that clings to coat sleeves and fogs up bus windows. It's the kind of weather that makes people pull into themselves, clutching their phones or staring blankly ahead, avoiding eye contact as if human connection might demand too much energy they don't have to spare. 17-year-old Ethan Monroe boards the number 7 bus at Congress Street every weekday at 4:15. His backpack heavy with textbooks he rarely opens and a sketchpad filled with half-finished drawings he'll never show anyone. His dark hair falls across his forehead in unruly waves, perpetually damp from the walk between his part-time job at the Maritime Museum and the bus stop. He's learned to move through the world with a careful invisibility, shoulders slightly hunched, eyes trained on the scuffed floor, existing in the negative space between other people's lives. The bus driver, a gruff man named Dale with weathered hands and a Red Sox cap, barely glances up as Ethan scans his pass. The hydraulic doors wheeze shut behind him, sealing out the sound of rain pattering on wet pavement and the distant call of gulls circling the old port. Inside, the bus smells like wet wool, coffee from paper cups, and the faint diesel exhaust that seeps through the floor vents. Ethan takes his usual seat 3 rows from the back, right side, by the window. From here, he can watch Portland slide past in watercolor blurs, the brick facades of Exchange Street, the Irish pub with its green awning, the corner market where immigrants from Somalia gather to buy calling cards. The city feels both intimate and vast, full of lives intersecting and diverging like spokes that never quite touch. It's on a Tuesday, unremarkable except for the particular slant of afternoon light breaking through storm clouds, that Ethan first notices her. She sits 4 rows ahead on the opposite side, by the window, a woman probably in her early 40s with auburn hair pulled back in a loose bun. She wears a navy peacoat and holds a paperback book with a cracked spine, the kind that's been read multiple times. What catches Ethan's attention isn't her appearance, though there's something graceful in the way she holds herself, but the expression on her face as she reads. It's a look of complete absorption, but also of gentleness, as if the words on the page are old friends she's welcoming back. Her lips curve slightly at the corners, not quite a smile, but something warmer than neutrality. When an elderly man struggles up the aisle with his walker, she looks up and shifts her bag without being asked, creating space, offering a kind nod that requires no response. The gesture is small, instinctive, and it pierces something in Ethan's chest with unexpected sharpness. His mother used to do that, create space for people without fanfare, offer kindness as naturally as breathing. Margaret Monroe had been a nurse at Maine Medical Center, working night shifts in the ICU, coming home with exhaustion etched into her face, but still managing to ask Ethan about his day, to listen with genuine interest. She'd had auburn hair too, though darker than this stranger's, and she'd worn it in a similar loose bun during her rare days off. Margaret died 3 years ago, a sudden aneurysm that gave no warning and allowed no goodbyes. Ethan had been 14, standing in his grandmother's kitchen eating cereal before school when his father called with the news, his voice fractured into something unrecognizable. The grief had been immediate and totalizing, a black hole that consumed everything, color, sound, the feeling of being safely tethered to the world. His father, Tom Monroe, a fishing boat captain who spent weeks at a time at sea, had retreated further into his work after Margaret's death. Their apartment in East Deering became a place of careful silence, where father and son moved around each other like ships navigating fog, communicating in grunts and nods, never quite meeting each other's eyes. Tom wasn't cruel, just absent, hollowed out, his grief manifesting as emotional paralysis that left no room for his son's pain. Ethan learned to carry his loss privately, letting it calcify into something dense and permanent in his chest. He stopped talking about his mother, stopped mentioning her favorite songs or the warmth of her hand on his shoulder when he was anxious. He became the quiet kid, the one teachers forgot to call on, the one who ate lunch alone with his sketchpad, drawing intricate mechanical birds and imaginary cities. But on this bus, watching this stranger turn pages with patient hands, something cracks in his careful armor. The resemblance isn't exact. This woman's face is rounder, her jawline softer. But there's something in her presence, in the quality of her attention, that reminds Ethan of what he's lost. It's in the way she holds her book, protective but not possessive. In the way she glances out the window at the rain-slicked streets with thoughtful melancholy. In the way she seems to exist in the world with a fundamental gentleness that makes the air around her feel safer. Ethan doesn't realize he's staring until she looks up suddenly, her gaze sweeping the bus and landing briefly on him. Their eyes meet for a fraction of a second, hers curious and kind, his quickly averted in embarrassment. He feels his face flush and immediately looks down at his own hands. The bus lurches to a stop at Cumberland Avenue. Several passengers disembark, their umbrellas blooming open as they step into the rain. The woman remains, turning back to her book, unaware of the small earthquake she's caused in a teenage boy's carefully managed emotional landscape. Ethan tells himself it's nothing, just a random observation that means nothing. But the next day at 4:15, he boards the same bus and finds himself scanning the seats before he sits down. She's there again, same seat, different book. This time, she wears a grey cardigan over a white blouse, and her hair is down, falling in soft waves past her shoulders. There's no ring on her left hand. He notices this detail with strange intensity. This time, Ethan deliberately chooses a seat with a better view, 2 rows back and across the aisle. He positions himself so he can observe without being obvious, pulling out his sketchpad as cover but finding himself unable to draw, his pencil hovering uselessly over blank paper. She reads for most of the journey, occasionally gazing out at the passing neighborhoods. At one point, a young mother boards with a crying infant, clearly overwhelmed, diaper bag spilling its contents onto the floor. The woman with the book doesn't hesitate. She sets her reading aside and helps gather scattered items, speaking in low, soothing tones. The mother thanks her with visible relief, and the woman simply smiles and returns to her seat as if this small act required no special acknowledgement. Ethan's throat tightens. His mother would have done exactly that. The bus becomes a ritual. Every weekday, Ethan boards at 4:15 and looks for her. She's there most days, though not all. Sometimes her seat remains empty, and those absences leave Ethan with a hollow feeling he doesn't want to name. On the days she's present, he feels calmer, his anxious thoughts quieting to a manageable hum. He begins to notice small details. She drinks tea from a thermos, never coffee. She favors classic literature, Steinbeck, Morrison, Atwood. She always offers her seat to anyone who seems to need it more. She has a habit of tucking her hair behind her left ear when she's deeply focused. She carries a tote bag with a faded library logo. One Friday, the bus is more crowded than usual. Ethan boards to find all the seats taken except for the one next to her. His heart hammers as he approaches, suddenly hyper-aware of his awkward teenage body. Is this seat taken? His voice comes out rougher than intended. She looks up, and for the first time, he sees her eyes clearly, warm brown with flecks of amber framed by laugh lines. Not at all. Please, sit. Her voice is soft but assured, with a trace of Maine accent. Ethan sits, acutely conscious of the 8 inches between them, of the faint scent of lavender soap. You're a regular on this route, she says suddenly, not looking up from her book. Ethan startles. Yeah, I work at the Maritime Museum, after school. That must be interesting work. She looks up now, her attention fully present. Do you like it? He shrugs, then forces himself to give a real answer. It's okay. I mostly do inventory and help with school groups. The history is kind of cool. She nods thoughtfully. There's something powerful about objects that have stories, isn't there? All those artifacts connected to people's actual lives. It's the kind of observation his mother would have made. Ethan feels his chest constrict. Yeah, exactly. They fall into silence, but it's not uncomfortable. When Ethan finds the courage, he asks, "What are you reading?" She shows him the cover, East of Eden by Steinbeck. A reread. It feels different each time, depending on where I am in my own life. Is it good? It's about the nature of good and evil, about choice and inheritance. Heavy, but beautiful. I'm not really a big reader. But you're an artist. She gestures to his sketchpad. May I? He hands it over before his self-consciousness can intervene. She pages through carefully, studying his drawings. These are remarkable, she says quietly. You have a real gift for capturing not just what people look like, but something essential about them. That takes genuine empathy. No one has ever looked at his work with such careful attention. Thanks, Ethan mumbles. I'm Diane, by the way. Diane Caldwell. Ethan Monroe. They shake hands, her grip firm but not aggressive, warm and dry. It's nice to meet you officially, Ethan. The bus reaches Diane's stop, Woodford's Corner. She gathers her things. I hope we can talk again, she says, the sincerity unmistakable. Yeah, that would be good. She smiles and steps off into the early evening. Ethan watches through the rain-streaked window as she walks toward a modest Cape Cod house with warm light glowing in the windows. As the bus pulls away, Ethan realizes his hands are shaking slightly. Not from anxiety, but from something else. A feeling like hope, fragile and tentative, stirring in the hollow place where his grief has lived for so long. For the first time since his mother died, he feels less alone. The days grow shorter as November deepens into December and Portland takes on the muted beauty of a coastal city bracing for winter. Christmas decorations appear in storefront windows, wreaths on Victorian doors, mechanical reindeer that nods creakily outside the 7-Eleven. Ethan lives for 4:15, for the moment when he boards the bus and scans for Diane's presence. She's there 4 days out of 5, and on the days she's absent, disappointment sits heavy in his stomach. They fall into a pattern of conversation, starting tentatively and gradually deepening. Diane asks about school, and unlike most adults who inquire with polite disinterest, she listens, asking follow-up questions that demonstrate genuine curiosity. In return, Ethan learns fragments of Diane's life. She works as a social worker for the state, mostly with families in crisis, cases involving neglect, substance abuse, poverty's grinding toll. Someone has to bear witness, she says one afternoon. Someone has to see these families not as statistics, but as people doing their best under impossible circumstances. Ethan thinks about being seen. Do you ever feel like it's too much? Diane considers carefully. Yes, often. But I also know what it feels like to be invisible in your own pain. I won't do that to others. There's personal knowledge in how she says this. Ethan wants to ask but doesn't. Instead, he tells her about the Maritime Museum, about helping set up exhibits featuring artifacts from the fishing industry's golden age. My dad's a fisherman, Ethan offers, surprising himself. Lobster boats, sometimes the big trawlers. He's gone a lot. That must be hard, being alone so much. I'm used to it. The words come out defensive. Being used to something and being okay with it aren't always the same thing. The observation lands with uncomfortable accuracy. On a Thursday, as they're both preparing to exit, Diane reaches into her bag and pulls out a book, The House on Mango Street, by Sandra Cisneros. I thought you might like this, she says. It's short, not intimidating. The drawings in your sketchpad reminded me of these stories. Both are about paying attention to details everyone else overlooks. You don't have to return it, Diane adds. It's yours. Thank you, Ethan manages, his voice thick with emotion. That night, in his small bedroom, Ethan reads the entire book in one sitting. Diane was right. The vignettes speak to something in him, capturing loneliness and longing, finding poetry in poverty. When he finishes, it's past midnight. The apartment is silent. His father is at sea. Ethan sits in the dark and allows himself to cry for the first time in months. Actual sobbing, shoulders shaking with everything he's been holding in. He cries for his mother, for his father lost in grief, for himself, for the loneliness that's become familiar, and he cries because Diane saw something in him worth nurturing. The next day, Ethan sits beside Diane without asking. "I read it," he says, "last night, all of it. What did you think?" "It made me feel less alone." Diane's expression softens. That's the power of good literature. It reminds us our private pain isn't as private as we think. They talk about the book for most of the ride. Diane speaks with passion, but without pretension. "You should write," she tells him, "or keep drawing but add words. You have a perspective that deserves expression. No one wants to hear what I have to say." "I do." She says it simply, as if it's obvious truth. Ethan feels something shift in his chest. He realizes with startling clarity that he's falling into something, not romantic love, but something equally intense. He's beginning to need Diane in a way that feels both right and deeply wrong. The following week, Portland gets its first significant snow. The bus runs late, delayed by accidents and cautious drivers. When Ethan finally boards, he finds Diane in their usual spot, space beside her conspicuously empty. He slides in with familiar ease now. "Quite a storm," she says. "Yeah." The museum closed early. They ride in companionable silence, watching the city transformed by snow. "Can I ask you something personal?" Diane's voice is careful. Ethan's stomach tightens, but he nods. "Your drawings. Many have a recurring figure. A woman, always drawn from behind or with her face obscured. Who is she?" "My mom," he says quietly. "She died 3 years ago." "Oh, Ethan." Diane's hand moves as if to touch his arm, then stops. "I'm so sorry. She was a nurse at Maine Med. An aneurysm, just sudden. And your father? He's around, but not really. We don't talk about her, about anything." Diane is quiet for a long moment. When she speaks, her voice carries personal knowledge. "I lost someone too, my brother. He struggled with addiction. He overdosed 4 years ago, alone in a motel room in Lewiston." Ethan turns to look at her fully, seeing grief in the fine lines around her mouth. "That's why I do the work I do," she continues, "trying to catch families before they fall apart completely. I couldn't save my brother, but maybe I can help others." "I'm sorry," Ethan says. "Thank you. Grief is strange. It doesn't go away. You just learn to carry it differently. Do you ever feel guilty? For being okay sometimes? For laughing when they're dead and can't?" Diane meets his gaze. "Yes, all the time. But honoring the people we've lost doesn't mean we stop living. Your mother especially, she sounds like she gave a lot of love. People like that want us to be happy." Ethan's vision blurs with tears. "I don't know how to keep going." "You do what you're doing. You get up, you go to school, you work, you draw. You put one foot in front of the other, and eventually the world starts to make sense again in a new way." The bus reaches Diane's stop. She gathers her things but pauses. "Would you like to come have tea sometime? At my house? Just an offer. Sometimes it helps to have a place to talk." Ethan's heart leaps. Is this appropriate? Should he say yes? But the need for connection overrides caution. "I'd like that," he says. "Saturday afternoon around 2, the Cape Cod with the blue shutters, number 42 Woodfords." "Okay, I'll be there." Diane smiles and exits into the snow. Ethan watches as she makes her way up the shoveled walk to her front door. He sits back, heart pounding, simultaneously elated and terrified. He's crossing some threshold, entering territory he doesn't understand. But the alternative, continuing to drift alone, feels impossible now. The bus continues through snowy streets, and Ethan closes his eyes, imagining what it might feel like to be somewhere warm and safe, to sit across from someone who cares. Outside, Portland is blanketed in white, temporarily transformed. Inside Ethan's chest, hope stirs again, fragile but persistent. Saturday arrives cold and brilliantly clear. Ethan wakes early in the empty apartment, his father still at sea, and spends an anxious morning deciding what to wear, what to bring, whether he's making a terrible mistake. He settles on jeans and a dark green sweater his mother bought him. One of the few items he's kept from that earlier life. He brings his sketch pad, questions whether that seems too eager, then finally stuffs it in his backpack with decisive frustration. The bus ride to Woodford's Corner feels endless. Ethan watches neighborhoods change from working-class East Deering to the more settled, tree-lined streets where Diane lives. Number 42 is a modest Cape Cod painted soft yellow with blue shutters, a brick walkway neatly shoveled, a small garden put to bed for winter. There's a bird feeder on the porch and a pine wreath on the door. Ethan stands on the sidewalk for a full minute before he forces himself to walk up and knock. Diane answers almost immediately, dressed casually in jeans and a cream sweater, her hair loose. She smiles with genuine warmth. "Ethan, come in. You're right on time." The interior is cozy without being cluttered. A living room with a wood-burning stove, bookshelves lining every wall, plants on every surface, framed photographs scattered throughout. "I made tea," Diane says. "Come sit." They settle at a small kitchen table overlooking the backyard. Garden space, dormant under snow, evergreen shrubs, a stone path to a wooden bench. Diane pours tea and pushes cookies toward Ethan, who takes one mechanically, too nervous to eat. "Thank you for coming," Diane says. "I'm glad you asked." They talk about small things at first. The snow, holiday decorations, Ethan's plans for winter break. He has none. Gradually, conversation deepens. Diane asks about school, but drills into specifics, what he likes to draw, whether he's applied to colleges, he hasn't, what he imagines for his future. A blank wall. Terrifying. "What about art school?" Diane suggests. "Places like Maine College of Art." "I can't afford that. My dad makes enough to keep us fed, but not much beyond. I'd need scholarships, and I don't know how to apply." "I can help you," Diane offers, "if you want." Ethan feels gratitude so intense it's almost painful. "Why are you doing this? Helping me?" Diane is quiet for a moment. "When I look at you, I see someone who's drowning and trying very hard not to let anyone notice. I know what that feels like. I also see someone with genuine talent who's in danger of convincing himself he doesn't matter. I can't stand by and watch that happen." "You remind me of my mom," Ethan says suddenly. "Not just how you look, but the way you see people, the way she used to see me." Diane's expression shifts, compassion mixed with concern. "Ethan, I'm honored by that. Truly. But I want to be careful about something." She chooses words with visible care. "When we lose someone we love, there's a natural tendency to seek that same feeling of safety in other relationships. That's human, but it can become complicated if we're not aware." "What do you mean?" But Ethan knows. "I mean, I want to help you, to be supportive, but I can't replace your mother. No one can. And if our friendship becomes about recreating what you've lost, rather than building something new, it won't be healthy for either of us." The words sting because they're accurate. Ethan looks down at his tea. "I'm not trying to replace her," he says defensively. "I know she's gone. I believe you, but feelings don't always follow logic. Sometimes we need things from people that aren't appropriate to the relationship we actually have. Sometimes we confuse care with something deeper because we're so hungry. So you're saying I shouldn't come here anymore?" "No. I'm saying we should both be aware of what this is and what it isn't. I can be a friend, a mentor, someone who believes in you, but I can't be your mother, and you can't expect me to fill that role." Ethan feels tears threatening. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do." Diane reaches across the table and covers his hand with hers, a gesture of comfort, acknowledging complexity. "You don't have to be okay, but you do have to keep living. And you need to build genuine connections, not just find substitutes. What if I don't know how? Then you learn, slowly, imperfectly, making mistakes. That's what all of us are doing." They sit in silence, Diane's hand still covering his, the touch both comforting and troubling. "I saw my brother in every young man I tried to help," Diane says quietly. "Every case file, every struggling teenager. I was always looking for a chance to save him retroactively. It took me a long time to realize that impulse was keeping me from actually helping people. I was trying to heal my own wound through their lives. Did it work, realizing that? Eventually. It's still a struggle sometimes, but I'm more aware now. She withdraws her hand. That's what I'm offering you. Awareness. Not judgment, but honesty about what's happening between us. They spend the next hour talking about lighter things, books, local galleries, places in Portland he might find inspiring. She shows him her brother's photograph and tells stories that render him as a full person, rather than just tragedy. When Ethan prepares to leave, Diane walks him to the door. You can come back. I want you to know that. But think about building other connections too. Don't put all your need into this one relationship. That's too much pressure for both of us. Okay. And Ethan, talk to your father. He's lost someone too. You might find more common ground than you expect. Ethan doesn't respond, just nods and steps into the cold. On the bus ride home, he opens his sketch pad and begins to draw. Not mechanical birds or portraits, but something abstract. Two figures reaching toward each other across a space that's simultaneously empty and impossibly vast. He doesn't know how to navigate what he's feeling, doesn't know how to want something appropriate. He only knows that someone has made him feel like he matters, like his future might contain something beyond survival. And if that feeling is complicated, exists in blurred space between need and care, well, maybe that's what healing looks like when you're 17 and drowning and someone finally throws you a rope. Christmas comes and goes with minimal acknowledgement. Tom returns from sea on December 23rd, exhausted, managing a brief Merry Christmas before disappearing into his bedroom. Ethan spends Christmas Day mostly alone, eating Chinese takeout, feeling the weight of the empty chair where his mother used to sit. Diane texts him. They'd exchanged numbers. A simple message. Thinking of you today. Remember to be gentle with yourself. It's the only acknowledgement that feels genuine. The week between Christmas and New Year's is suspended time. The museum is closed, and Ethan finds himself with long, empty days. He draws compulsively, trying to capture something he can't articulate, the feeling of being seen, the terror of being known, the desperate hope that he might build a life worth living. On December 30th, Diane texts, "Are you free tomorrow? Last day of the year. Thought we could take a walk." They meet at East End Beach in early afternoon, the sky pale winter blue, temperature hovering just above freezing. The beach is mostly empty. Diane is bundled in a long wool coat, bright red scarf, breath forming small clouds. She waves when she sees Ethan. "I love this place in winter," she says as they begin walking. "There's something peaceful about it when it's empty." "My mom used to bring me here," Ethan says. "In summer, she'd pack sandwiches and we'd spend whole afternoons just sitting, talking about nothing important." "Tell me about her," Diane says, "if you want to." And so Ethan talks, really talks, for the first time since Margaret died. He tells Diane about his mother's terrible sense of humor, her love of old movies, the way she'd sing off-key without self-consciousness. He talks about her work as a nurse, how she'd come home emotionally wrung out, but still make him feel like the most important person in her world. He describes her patience when he was anxious, her fierce protectiveness, her absolute conviction that he was special. Diane listens without interrupting, occasionally asking questions that prompt deeper reflection. They walk the full length of the beach and back, their footprints the only marks in sand. "She sounds remarkable," Diane says, "and she was right about you. I don't feel special, I feel broken. Broken things can be mended, not back to their original state, that's impossible, but into something new. Japanese pottery has this concept called kintsugi, where broken ceramics are repaired with gold. The damage becomes part of the object's history, highlighted rather than hidden. You think my damage can be turned gold? I think you're in the process of becoming someone who understands pain, which means you'll offer genuine compassion to others. That's a kind of gold." They reach rocks, forming a natural seawall, and climb up to sit, looking out at the water. A lobster boat works the channel, and Ethan wonders if his father is out there somewhere, alone with his own grief. I've been thinking about what you said, Ethan begins, about needing other connections. And, you're right, but I don't know how. I've been alone so long, I don't know how to talk to people my age. They seem so normal. I don't fit. You fit with yourself. That's most important. The right connections will follow. I need to talk to my dad. You were right about that too. But I don't know what to say. Start small. Ask about his work. Tell him about yours. You don't have to dive into grief immediately. Just rebuild basic communication. Sometimes small stuff creates space for big stuff. What if he doesn't want to talk? Then you try again. People drowning in their own pain sometimes can't reach out, but they can still be reached. Don't give up on him. They sit watching the water, the light, the lobster boat's slow dance. I applied to Maine College of Art, Ethan says suddenly. Yesterday. Filled out the application, sent my portfolio, everything. I don't know if I'll get in or if we can afford it, but I applied. Diane turns with a smile so bright it transforms her face. Ethan, that's wonderful. I'm so proud of you. The words land like benediction. Ethan's eyes fill with tears he doesn't hide, letting them spill and freeze on his cheeks. Thank you, he manages, for everything, for seeing me. You're worth seeing, Diane says simply. Don't forget that. As afternoon wears on and temperature drops, they walk back toward the parking area. Diane has to drive to her sister's for New Year's Eve, and Ethan needs to catch the bus. Before they part, Diane pulls something from her bag, a small wrapped package, clearly a book. Happy New Year, she says, for the year ahead. Ethan unwraps carefully the collected poems of Mary Oliver. He pages through, seeing Diane has marked certain poems with sticky notes. Oliver writes about attention, Diane explains, about really seeing the world, finding the sacred in the ordinary. I thought you'd appreciate that. I don't have anything for you. Your company is gift enough, and your willingness to keep trying, to keep showing up for your own life. That's the best gift. They hug briefly, an awkward embrace between two people navigating complicated territory, and then Diane drives away. Ethan waits for the bus, clutching the poetry book, feeling something shift. Not healing exactly, that seems too complete. But maybe the beginning of healing, first tentative steps toward a future not entirely defined by loss. That night, back in the empty apartment, Ethan knocks on his father's bedroom door. Tom opens it, surprise evident. Can we talk? Ethan asks. Tom looks uncertain but finally nods, stepping aside. They sit awkwardly on the bed's edge, and for a long moment, neither speaks. I miss her, Ethan finally says, voice breaking. I miss Mom so much it physically hurts, and I don't know how to live with that. Tom's face crumples, tears streaming unexpectedly. Me too, every single day. I didn't realize you were struggling so much. I thought you were okay. I'm not okay, neither are you. We've both been drowning and pretending we're fine. Tom reaches out tentatively, and Ethan leans into his father's embrace, letting himself be held for the first time since the funeral. They cry together, 3 years of suppressed grief finally acknowledged. It's not a solution. One conversation won't repair 3 years of silence, but it's a beginning, a crack in the wall they've both built. When they separate, both exhausted, Tom asks, "How did you know to do this?" "Someone told me people who are drowning can still be reached," Ethan says. "You just have to keep trying." Tom nods slowly. "Your mom would be proud of you." The words are what Ethan has been waiting 3 years to hear, and they settle into him like seeds, promising future growth. Over following weeks, as January unfolds and Portland hunkers into deep winter, Ethan begins to build connections. He joins art club at school, awkwardly at first, but gradually finding his place. He has dinner with his father once a week, trying to learn how to talk again. He still sees Diane on the bus most afternoons, still values their conversations, but he's learning to carry his own weight, to not need her desperately. She remains important, a mentor, a friend, a reminder that kindness exists, but she's no longer the only thing keeping him afloat. He reads Mary Oliver, especially the one Diane marked most prominently, The Summer Day, with its closing question, "Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life?" Ethan doesn't have a complete answer, but he's beginning to understand that the question itself is the point, that living means constantly choosing to engage rather than give up. On a Tuesday in late January, riding the bus through brutal snowstorm, Diane tells him she's been offered a promotion, a supervisory position with more responsibility. "Are you going to take it?" "I think so. Time to try something new to make impact on a larger scale." "That's good. You'll be amazing." "What about you? Heard from Maine College of Art?" "Not yet. But even if I don't get in, I'm going to keep drawing, keep applying, figure out some path." Diane smiles, and Ethan realizes that while she still reminds him of his mother, she's also become her own person in his life. Diane Caldwell, who saw a drowning boy and threw him a lifeline. The bus reaches Diane's stop. She gathers her things, then pauses. "You're going to be okay, Ethan Monroe. I believe that completely." "I know," Ethan says. And surprisingly, he does. She exits into the storm, and Ethan watches her make her familiar walk, light in her windows golden and welcoming. Then the bus pulls away, continuing through snowy Portland streets, and Ethan opens his sketchpad to a fresh page. He begins to draw not mechanical birds or borrowed faces, but his own hands, scarred from grief, capable of creation, learning slowly how to build rather than just hold on. Around them, he sketches faint outlines of other hands, some recognizable and some still unknown. The connections he'll make, the people who will help him continue becoming whoever he's meant to be. Outside, the storm rages, transforming Portland into whiteout. But inside the bus, under fluorescent lights, surrounded by strangers also trying to get home, Ethan draws his vision of the future, imperfect, uncertain, but finally tentatively hopeful. The boy who thought he'd lost everything learns that what seems like the end can also be a beginning, that borrowed affection can point toward genuine connection, and that sometimes the mother's kindness you find in a stranger's eyes isn't a replacement for what you've lost, but a reminder that the world still contains unexpected grace if you're brave enough to keep looking for it.